Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 things to avoid, the top 5 bad practices when you're looking to acquire a new company, either a merger or an acquisition. And the number one most important bad thing that you can't do is, number one, avoid due diligence. Avoiding due diligence is the number one top bad thing or worst mistake you can possibly make when doing a business acquisition. Due diligence is the process of investigating the company that you're going to acquire. It requires you to go through bank statements, profit and loss statements, income statements, balance sheets, tax returns. You need to know what's coming in. You need to know what's going out. You need to know how profitable they are. You need to see what the MRR is, the monthly recurring revenue, and the ARR, annual recurring revenue. Should have at least 3 years worth of those things. Additionally, you should have a team of not just an accountant or a consultant reviewing that information, but you should also have a lawyer doing background checks, looking at lawsuits that have been filed, any possible demands, and you also want to look at insurance claims. Those things are very important when doing an acquisition. So number one worst thing to avoid doing, which is avoiding due diligence, failing to do it properly, or not getting those documents, not looking at it. That's number one. Number two would be failing to do good cultural integration. Number two, cultural integration. When you're purchasing a company, you want to make sure that there's going to be a good fit between the two companies. The acquiring one and the one that you're going to acquire need to be able to fit together. They need to be able to work together. You need to have teams that are going to work together. One of the things that I've seen over the years is sometimes that acquiring company, those employees that are there, the management, they don't get along with senior management or the director level of the acquiring company. There's sometimes some feeling of angst or aggression, or sometimes just hatred towards those people. Maybe it's some type of resentment because they weren't able to buy the company, or they're not in that upper higher level management, or they're not in the director role. So those types of people can have resentment, anger, and sometimes failing to, and they can also feed that down to the employees or the mid-level managers or below. And now you got frontline workers who think the company's awful and we're going to leave. So you got to make sure that you can fit together culturally. There's lots of different companies out there with lots of different company cultures. You want to make sure yours fit. If they don't fit, you can acquire a company and very quickly you can have senior level management leave. They can take employees and customers with them. Sometimes there's not non-compete agreements. There is no non-compete agreements or non-solicitation, confidentiality agreements. Those things are missing, and then they can't be enforced, and then you're out and you've just spent all this money. So you need to make sure that you account for that and you take advantage of the cultural integration process when you're acquiring a company. Now, on to number 3. Number 3, when you go to acquire a company, the worst mistake you can happen is lack of clear strategy. You need to have a clear strategy when you acquire a company. You can't just wing it. You need to know what you're doing. If you're in an HVAC business and you're going to acquire an electrical company, you got to make sure that you not only have the licenses, but that you have some type of cross-selling ability. You need to be able to have the strategy that when you enter into this, there won't be any mismanagement of the leads, the customer base. There needs to be these core business objectives, right? If you're an electrician and you're going to acquire an HVAC company, you need to be able to have this dovetailing of services. That way you're not just acquiring a competitor, but you're acquiring somewhere that you can acquire a company that you can advance or augment your existing business, or take that business and add additional services to that business. So that's one of the things you got to look at, is having a clear strategy. If you don't have a clear strategy, if you're an HVAC company, you're now going to buy a ski rental company. Do you see how there's no real integration? There's no clear strategy of what you're doing. Ski rental does not have anything to do with HVAC. They're so separate that it can be hard to use in an acquisition to grow. That wouldn't make any sense. Of course, we would all advise against it because it doesn't have that clear strategy. So that's number 3. There's two more of the horrible, rotten, worst things you can do in a merger or acquisition. Number 4 is, of course, overpaying. Paying too much for a company. If you're paying too much for a company because you want to expand, you want to grow, that's the worst thing you can do is acquire a company just because you have a feeling like you need to. You don't need to. It may be a good thing, but don't overpay. Don't pay too much. Follow an EBITDA formula, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, insurance. EBITDA formula, I've left the D off. But yeah, you want to have the EBITDA formula. You can use a multiple. You can use a comparable sale analysis. There's at least 3 to 5 ways to analyze a business. Make sure that you're in that range. You don't want to be overpaying for business. It doesn't make sense. Usually when people acquire businesses, there's some type of seller financing involved, or some type of a carryback note, or there's a security interest. You want to make sure that you're not so heavily laden with debt that you can't work your way out of it. That just doesn't make sense. It's easier to start a new brand or to do something else rather than to acquire if you're overpaying. So number 4 is overpaying. Don't overpay. The number 5 top biggest mistakes that I see in mergers and acquisitions is inadequate planning post-merger. So post-merger, post-acquisition, failure to integrate. If you've got a company that's just acquired a smaller company, you've got to plan the integration. You've got to decide in advance what that org chart is going to look like. If you don't have that, you're going to fail. All the people aren't going to know who they're reporting to. There's going to be massive confusion. There's going to be a failure to maintain accounts. If those things are not set up, the integration is not set up properly, you're not going to be able to move that information over, whether it's financial data, whether it's customer data, CRM data. Those accounts, those contracts can be lost in space. Let's have an integration plan, because if you don't, you can waste your money on that acquisition. Those are the top 5 things that I've seen businesses fail on when doing a merger or acquisition. Don't let it be one of yours. Hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching.